The Last of Us Part 2. Totally not one of the most divisive stories in video game history. What's going on, everybody? My name is Umar Farouk. I am a trauma-informed licensed therapist, and I had a blast doing a react to The Last of Us Part 1, so if you haven't already watched it, check that out. Today, I'm going to be reacting to The Last of Us Part 2. Major shout out to Meg's Boring Life. She allowed me to use her YouTube upload, so if you want to go ahead and check out the full video, links in the description. I'm going to be adding on to a lot of the ideas that I've already discussed in the first video, so if you want to have a full understanding of everything I'm going to be talking about in today's video, go ahead and check that one out. Links in the description down below. Without further ado, there's a lot to get into today, so let's jump right in.
I tried knocking, but...
Hey.
You know, talking about how impressed they are with you and how well you're helping out.
I love, by the way, the difference in tone that the voice actor chooses when he's playing Joel. There's a drastic difference between how he talks when he's, trying to survive versus how he talks to Ellie now that he sees her as a daughter. We do that. The ways we approach the people we love, the ways we talk to people we love are always going to be different than our everyday demeanor. And so in the polyvagal theory, which is a theory that kind of describes the fight or flight system in a different perspective, this is what we would call the ventral vagal state. Essentially, the ventral vagal state is the state that we want to be in, or the state that we kind of get to when we're trying to show that, hey, we're no harm, that we're good to approach for social engagement, we want to be friendly, and that all comes in the form of like a lower heart rate, relaxed facial expression, and just kind of more just overall friendly in your body language. The second state in the polyvagal theory is sympathetic nervous system, which is when you get into your fight or flight. And then finally, there's your dorsal vagal system, which is the freeze response that you get when when fight or flight isn't working and the threat in your environment is a bit too intense.
Something about a clock. How do you...
Joel, it's pretty late and I gotta...
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see here, like, the damage in the relationship we discussed in the last video. Joel is here. He's trying to, in his own ways, repair the relationship. However, Ellie's nervous system knows something is up. She can't cognitively verify whether or not Joel is lying, but she feels enough to know something is up. And the ways that Joel is going about repairing the relationship isn't necessarily fully honest. And naturally speaking, anybody in Ellie's shoes who has attachment issues, who finally put her trust into someone she can actually rely on and trust her safety with, has betrayed her by lying to her. We see the aftermath of Joel's messy lie.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself.
So this scene is very important as the game progresses. This song that Joel plays for Ellie is something that Ellie will continuously come back to as a form of what we call resourcing. We'll get into that a little bit later. I really want to emphasize the importance of a role this scene plays. Him playing a song for her seems to be one of the more honest attempts of him trying to repair the relationship, even though it's not a flat-out apology. The introduction of our favorite character. That's sarcasm if you couldn't tell. So just like we established with Joel in the first game, this is a good demonstration of people with PTSD will experience nightmares, and that's because their minds are trying to process a traumatic event in sleep. However, as the body's heart rate starts to rise and as like you're trying to process these really triggering imagery in your sleep, your body can't sustain a state of sleep while the heart rate starts to increase.
Okay. You're doing your teeth grinding thing.
It's no mistaken, without you I can't function.
We can kind of see in Abby's body language, going off of the polyvagal theory, she's transferring from the ventral vagal state to the sympathetic nervous system state where her fight or flight is starting to kick in.
Oh, got any brushes or a towel or anything?
You could even see in her facial expressions like this is not a pleasant experience for her. A lot of the times we look at heightened states of triggers, heightened states due to trauma they look like this. There's almost this compulsive drive inside of you to carry out what you're about to do out of your trauma response, whether it be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It's almost like this possessive feeling. It doesn't feel good. However, we are driven to carry it out. And one can argue that Abby's going to feel absolutely cathartic about what she's about to do, but you could see in her face in this clip right over here, she doesn't look too happy. This is a very painful reminder of her past.
Appreciate it. I'm Mel, by the way.
Tommy, this is my brother.
Joe.
And there it is. This is where everybody's like body language and their social demeanor changes. Once again, re-emphasizing the polyvagal theory. They're starting to enter that sympathetic nervous system state. Yeah, everyone's about ready for a shit show.
Because they have.
Ah, there it is. There's a scene. Okay. Very difficult to watch sometimes.
Laura, all clear?
He's out.
I mean, it's a testament to how good the performances are. Like, this is so raw.
Get off me!
I learned this from my professor who taught me all about trauma. Any amount of destabilization or any amount of pain that actively starts to engage your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. So, I mean, you could only imagine what this is doing to Joel.
Who are you?
Guess.
Abby saying guess to Joel, demanding him to recognize her. I imagine, like, down here in her body, she's probably feeling a huge surge of cortisol, like this very uncomfortable reminder of what happened to her father. And up here intellectually, upstairs in her head, there's this cognitive approach for closure. The pain is down here, and the interpretation is up over here. In this moment, her interpretation of the moment is to look for closure, which honestly, as long as she doesn't address the trauma that's stored into her body, I don't think any amount of inflicting pain to Joel will really get her to that closure.
You stupid old man. You don't get to rush this.
Ooh, okay, I'm gonna pause here. So I want to take a second. I mean, I think in these React videos, I do a lot talking about the characters, but let's talk about the viewer for a second. I want to take a second and show some empathy for people who really don't like this part of the story. We talk about these characters like Joel and Ellie as if they're the only ones sharing this bonding experience within the first game. However, us as the viewer also played a major role in their bonding experience, and much like Joel and Ellie have formed an attachment with each other and formed some comfort within themselves within the attachment, you can't necessarily say we haven't done the same thing as the viewer. So to see a beloved character like Joel be tortured in this way, I imagine vicariously we start to experience the same trauma. By no means am I saying that we're traumatized by watching this. That might be an overstatement. I'm just talking about, I think our bodies are vicariously participating in a bit of like a heightened state. Our heart rate might be rising. We might start feeling discomfort in our bodies as we watch the scene. And the way our brain interprets this experience, we're like, hey, yeah, screw Abby. We don't like Abby. And that is not a pretty sight.
Put her down! Get off me! Get her!
You see Ellie kind of immediately engage in her fight or flight system. She perceives a threat, her heart rate jumps, her body releases an influx of cortisol. Her immediate go-to is to fight. This is where we see her kind of get into the dorsal vagal state.
Hands! Get the fuck off me! You're gonna fucking die!
At this point, the body has no other choice but to scream and shake, even though she's being pinned down. At the very least, she can scream.
Get up! Joel, fucking get up!
This is like one of those situations that change your life forever.
Please get up!
That ringing in her ears is a very, very good depiction of what people feel in these heightened states when they're being pinned down. The imagery of what she's just kind of witnessed is so gruesome and so brutal. Also, kind of referencing back to the first game, triggering her abandonment issues. Not that Joel is like intentionally abandoning her or anything, but the loss of this figure in her life is absolutely going to remind her body of what it was like to lose a key attachment figure that her body still remembers from her developmental years when she lost her mother. That, in combination with the gruesomeness of the scene and just like her being pinned down and all that cortisol being built up, her body is going to enter what we call the dorsal vagal state. The dorsal vagal state is essentially the freeze response. Your fight or flight is kicking in. However, you're being held down in the way that Ellie is right here. Your heart rate starts to increase. Your body knows, your lizard brain, your autonomic nervous system knows that if your heart rate gets too high, you're at risk of having a heart attack. So what it does, it kicks in the parasympathetic nervous system. This part of our body is what calms us down. However, the problem is, in a situation like this, the body can't instantly put the adrenaline away. It's already out and doing its thing. So in this case, the parasympathetic nervous system isn't naturally getting her slowly out of her triggered state. It isn't naturally easing her out. It's forcing its way in while there's still adrenaline in her system. And this is how the freeze state happens. This is what people might consider to be dissociation, when they kind of just start to black out. The depiction in the scene of the way Ellie just hears ringing and she can barely hear what they're saying is a very accurate demonstration of what someone might feel in these states. Another example of this is the fawn response, is like when you just kind of shut down and you kind of end up accepting everything that's coming your way. You're just kind of in a people please state. You're like, yes, just to get the situation over with. Freeze and fawn are a way for your body to kind of dissociate away or detach, disidentify from the pain that is too overwhelming for the experience. So whereas fight or flight would be to help her run away from or fight her way through this experience, the freeze and fawn would be her body's way to protect her from experiencing too much. Oof, it's such a hard scene to watch. Once again, I'm going to reference like the viewer's sense of anxiety in this scene. Like, I remember the first time I watched this, like, I teared up quite a bit. But before I teared up, like, I felt angry. I think we kind of see Ellie, like, in this brain foggy state. Like, she's just kind of sluggish. She almost looks like dissociative. This is very common for someone who enters the freeze response during a traumatic experience. The body learns that, hey, like, instead of feeling the pain, we can just kind of check out. Let's not fail to mention, like, there's a lot of grief here too. Joel's death here is the epitome of what traumatic grief looks like. There's grief in the normal sense where, like, we just lose someone and that is very painful. Our life changes forever and we have to learn to adapt with our love for this individual without them being with us for the rest of our lives. When that person is taken away from you in a very traumatizing way, this complicates things. She is unable to grieve peacefully because her grief reminds her body of what it feels like to be traumatized. I see him die and not being able to do anything about it despite all the energy building up. So in her situation, she will not be able to grieve peacefully until she processes her trauma. So this is us revisiting the guitar scene from earlier in the game. I mentioned that this is a form of resourcing. So resourcing is something that we utilize in therapy as a tool to help to calm the nervous system. Resourcing can range anywhere from grounding and breathing exercises to bilateral stimulation, things that kind of feel good to the body. The modality of resourcing that I was personally trained in is to kind of recall memories that we hold close to our hearts, whether they be in the form of complete safety, whether they bring about a feeling of complete security, joy, bliss, and then we start to kind of track the physical sensations in our bodies that the memory brings up. And I think in this moment of this turbulent past few days that Ellie's just had, playing this guitar and keeping that one memory of Joel playing the guitar alive is not only a way to utilize resourcing, but maybe also even to honor the grief.
Ellie, I just saw you breathe spores.
I told you. I'm immune. I can't get you infected if that's what you're worried about. can't make you immune either.
Ellie saying, I can't make you immune either, that comes with a lot of guilt weight into that statement. Unlike the game in the HBO series, Ellie tries to give her blood to Sam to make him immune. If we were to just pretend that this is following the HBO canon, that's probably what she would kind of recall. In the larger scheme of things, Ellie's guilt of not being able to fulfill her role in contributing to the vaccine is probably coming out a little tiny bit in that statement of like, I can't make you immune either. So once again, during like this stressful encounter that she had with Dina, she's looking to the guitar for resourcing.
It's starting to sound like something. Happy birthday, kiddo.
This is such a wholesome scene.
This is a thing that took a mighty effort to find.
This is once again one of the more honest efforts from Joel's end to kind of repair that relationship that had been damaged. This is before, obviously, Ellie finds out the truth, but... Developers at Naughty Dog, they knew what they were doing for sure. This is kind of like a prime example of what I like to invite my clients to be able to kind of bring themselves back to. Some place that felt like everything was just fine. And you could see in Ellie's expressions in this beautifully crafted scene. This is a very joyous memory for her. Wow. This is like a really, really beautiful kind of illustration of how trauma leads into even our most precious memories when it goes unresolved. When we have a lot of complex forms of trauma, a lot of the timeline of our memories are filled with these painful events. And when we look back on our memories, the pain of those events, as long as they're unsolved, almost tends to bleed into our more happier memories. So this is kind of like the epitome of what it could kind of look like sometimes. At the end of this very beautiful memory, Ellie has this painful reminder of what could have been with the Fireflies, what her contribution in making a vaccine would have looked like. And also it's a painful reminder of like of the potential lie that she hasn't confirmed yet, that Joel has been telling her all this time, but she can kind of pick up on. So right now in the present day, as she's experiencing this flashback through this resourcing activity, even there, some pain is starting to creep in. When I do resourcing with clients, I try to make sure that we don't pick a memory that has some holes or cracks in them. And this is a memory, although just a minute ago was beautifully blissful, there is a hole at the end. There is a crack at the end in which the pain and the trauma can kind of start to seep through.
Hi, Nora.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
So this is where we kind of see like the brutality of Joel starting to live through Ellie in her pursuit for revenge.
Abby.
I'm fucking dead anyway. Why would I tell you anything?
Last chance.
I'm not giving up, my friend.
And yeah, we see Ellie get taken over by this overwhelming urge to carry out her revenge. Yeah, I can imagine like she's shaking because all of that cortisol being built up. Her body is probably in this heightened state within that, once again, that sympathetic nervous system state. When we look at the polyvagal theory.
Immune. It made no difference.
What the hell are you thinking? Running off in the middle of the night like that. You talk to me. You don't just leave me a goddamn note.
It's a little unfair for Ellie to hear, you talk to me, you don't just leave me a goddamn note, when all this time Ellie's been trying to talk to Joel. about, hey, tell me the truth. At some point, when Ellie's sense of humanity is kind of just being taken advantage of by lying to her, you can't help but empathize with Ellie's just kind of overall apathy towards Joel right now, or maybe not even apathy, resentment.
Tell me what happened here. If you lie to me one more time, I'm gone. You will never see me again.
This is a pretty strong boundary that Ellie's, I think, rightfully putting down. We want to keep relationships in our lives because we have care for an individual and they probably have care for us. But when the care that someone has for you starts to obscure or impair on the sense of humanity and the right to transparency and honesty that you have, boundaries are important. Boundaries are important so that we feel cared for in a more respectful manner. This is a very fair boundary that she's laying down.
Making a vaccine would have killed you, so I stopped them.
This completely reaffirms everything she's been kind of suspecting of the situation, but also doesn't take away from, it doesn't make the pain any less painful. And having the choice robbed from her, even though that would have meant her own death, and also that being associated with Joel, her father, attachment figure, lying to her consistently, betraying her trust in him, you'd have to understand this doesn't sit easy for anybody. Ellie's her own person. She's an autonomous being, doesn't matter her age. She has the right to feel whatever she feels in the situation. We see this grief come out almost, this grief of what could have been, this grief of what the world could have turned into if she was just given the opportunity. And I've already established in the last game, I think it's just as much of the fault of the Fireflies as it is of Joel's for robbing Ellie of the autonomy to choose and consent. And right now we see Ellie just kind of grieving the choice that she could have had.
Don't you fucking touch me! I'll go back. But we're done. Where the fuck is she?
This is a very complicated scene because there's so many layers, right? Well, one, she has to come to terms with facing the fact that she just killed a pregnant woman. Not to sound all woo-woo, but when it comes to addressing our inner turmoil, I feel like the universe just has this really weird way holding a reflection up to show you what you're doing. And this is kind of a rude awakening with this revenge plot that is clearly not serving her. This further adds so many more complicated layers, knowing that Dina's pregnant, and we see that same ringing coming back into her ears. Her body has learned that this dissociative freeze or zoning out space is something that her body can access during times of stress.
Stand up! Hands in the air, I shoot this one too.
Don't you do it, Ellie. Get out of here.
Stand up! Now!
Don't you fucking dare!
Shut the fuck up!
Abby is full sympathetic nervous system mode. She is full fight or flight. Another person's tribe has hurt her tribe and it's full on fight or flight at this point.
Just let him go. You killed my friends. We let you both live. And you wasted it.
This is just so insane because, oh my God, the layers. You don't have to be a therapist to see what's going on here. Both parties feel wronged. Both parties feel incredibly super righteous. This is why I'm a little confused why some people are really quick to choose one side over the other, aside from the fact that we've kind of grown with Ellie and Joel in the first game, so I understand that part. But outside of that, not to say that killing is okay or anything like that, but if so many people are quick to see that Joel was justified in the actions he took in taking all the lives of those Fireflies and the father of Abby, why isn't Abby justified in doing the same thing that Joel would have done if Joel was in her shoes?
She's a child, not some petri dish.
You think I don't... I'm aware of...
And you're okay with killing her.
No, I'm okay with developing a vaccine that'll help save millions of lives. How many Fireflies have died...
Naughty Dog does such a fantastic job. The dialogue between Marlene and the doctor here is literally the discourse that takes place about The Last of Us when people argue whether or not what Joel did was right or wrong. In my The Last of Us video, some people in the comments were already saying, from a utilitarian perspective, this is the right thing to do. But then some people were like, well, Joel was right because he was feeling so and so. I think the point of the story is like this isn't meant to be as objective as we think. Our sense of self can only allow us to look at the situation coming in with our own emotional baggage. That's the thing about trauma. Everything is so subjective. You can't necessarily compare one person's trauma to another person's trauma and say, well, no, this person's right and you were wrong. This person's trauma is more traumatized. It doesn't work like that. Our body's nervous system experiences trauma in its own way, and it's just as real from one person to another, regardless of severity.
Building? Abby.
No!
Abby, don't look.
Dad! Dad! No!
And now we see like Abby's end of how she experiences her traumatic grief. This is not only grief of her losing her own father, we see the trauma.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Talk to me.
I know all the leads have dried up. But Joel's still out there, you know?
I know. What can I do?
Let's go back. We can still make training.
Yeah, we kind of like see like how Abby got to the physique that she got to, which is really impressive, by the way. But in this circumstances, I think it's really important to point out like the role that the trauma has played in her everyday functioning. So like I've said many times on this channel before, PTSD is one of those things that it drastically changes your perspective on life from what it was before the traumatic event and what becomes your perspective after the traumatic event. Furthermore, this changes your behaviors. Some people start avoiding the stimuli. I think the less talked about behaviors that come after PTSD are compulsive or anxious-like behaviors. Abby's like relentless drive to go train. We have to go train right now. It's like this life or death thing for her. She can't miss a day of training. If she does, she feels this immense guilt. Almost feels like she's not honoring her father's death if she's not training. So one, it can serve as this cognitive function where it helps to alleviate her cognitive anxiety that like, hey, as long as I'm training and strengthening my physique, I will be ready for the day I face Joel. On a physical sense, she probably still has all this trauma stored up and she just needs to do something with it. And working out and training is probably providing a really powerful outlet for her to process this, although she's not really tapping into the traumatic memory and processing the emotion.
Yara! Where is the other apostate? Clip her wings.
Ooh. Oh my god. I can't watch the scene. Sorry. I remember seeing it for the first time. Let's just apply everything I told you about Ellie when she was being pinned down and the fight or flight's kicking in. The same thing is probably happening here, and I don't need to explain why this is so horrible. Dude, that strength is crazy.
Oh, thank God. Did she do this? I just tried talking to her. I tried to make her understand. But she just kept yelling. She started chasing me. Trying to make her stop. I was just pushing her off of me. She hit the table.
Listen, you were defending yourself. You did nothing wrong.
All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Colt's systemic trauma and the social responses that happen after the traumatic experiences that play a major role in how or if you'll develop PTSD. Here we're seeing like this cult-like organization or community in which where Lev is a transgender male, and it seems like the community is not okay with this. When I talk about trauma coming in the form of a perceived threat, that doesn't just fall in the form of a person in front of you. Trauma can be systemic as well. Imagine being someone who lives within a system whose cultural values and norms are designed to invalidate your existence. And for this reason, this is why we can consider racism, transphobia, homophobia, sexism, and all these different forms of hate towards a certain group as traumatic. Imagine trying to live in your own skin knowing someone else wants you dead for just existing. And then you add the complex layer of him trying to engage with the people in his community. Lev tries to talk to his mother and just try to have an honest conversation. And it's implied that she probably tried to kill him. The social response after the traumatic experience plays a major role in how or if you'll develop PTSD. If you have gone through something traumatic and someone tells you, well, you shouldn't have been there. Why were you wearing that? You had that coming to you. In your most vulnerable state, that induces a profound amount of shame, and that shame prevents you from feeling justified in processing the way you need to, in shaking and screaming and crying. All that cortisol just kind of gets stored up in the body, all that tension, all those emotions get stored up in the body, and now your body is too scared to process it. I don't understand, especially when we look at mental health, why we blame the victim or the survivor of the situation and not question why was there even an attacker in the first place. Lev's sister Yara consoles and tells him, you didn't do anything wrong, you were defending yourself. This is something that most survivors of traumatic experiences need to be able to hear and need to be able to have space to allow their emotions to come out in order to hopefully prevent themselves from developing PTSD. Now imagine all of the people that we know in our personal lives that go through their day-to-day struggle being blamed for things that weren't even their fault. Whether they're little t traumas, which are like what you can consider to be traumas that are low intensity, or macro t traumas, like a major event that kind of shakes your nervous system up. Doesn't matter the severity. Are we being empathetic to the idea that when our nervous system spikes up, even if it's a different type of trigger that it takes for our nervous system to spike up, are we being compassionate about the idea that, hey, I probably would have done the same thing if I got triggered? Anyways, I have a lot I could say there, but the social commentary here does a wonderful job to illustrate how much trauma in communities that are marginalized, that are pushed aside in society, and how hurtful it is to not make room for people to just exist. It's crazy.
She's pregnant. Good. Abby!
I think this is like a really good example of how when we get triggered and we get into our heightened states, our fight or flight state, we become different people. Before Lev comes in and knocks Abby back into her senses, like, hey, like, this isn't cool, she's pregnant, she interprets this act as good. Fine, let's just freaking do it. I think this speaks to how cloudy the state of our minds get during heightened states. This is totally an anecdote that I'm pulling out of nowhere, but if you look at for reasons that people are incarcerated, I'm willing to bet a mass majority of them are arrested during very triggered states. I'm not trying to justify or make excuses or anything, although I do believe the prison system is incredibly corrupt, causing more pain and trauma than it is rehabilitating or helping. It just goes to show that when we're in this state, we are no longer functioning in our higher human level brain. We are literally living within our limbic system and our lizard brain response, which is to carry out whatever we need to do for survival, until Lev, who is serving as a grounding point for her to like bring her just a little back down, bring her awareness just a little bit up enough to help her understand like, hey, this isn't cool.
Hey guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Hey, how'd you get out? Come on, little dude.
Ooh.
Come on, little guy. Do you want to eat?
Okay. That ringing is back. She finds herself once again in this flashback.
Ellie? Hey, Ellie. It's okay, you're home.
perfect example of what a PTSD flashback looks like in its most traditional sense. Now, it's important to remember that PTSD flashbacks don't always look like this, but this is a textbook scenario. Our brains are association and meaning-making machines. The banging of that shovel was associated with the sound that was similar to the traumatic experience that she had a flashback to. This isn't just a pathological thing. This isn't something that's just happening in the mind. Your body literally gets transported back to the traumatic experience. Think about it this way. Your body experiences something incredibly traumatic. It is hyper recording everything that is happening in the environment because the body knows that if I survive this experience, I need to know what's going on here to make sure that I either avoid this circumstance, or if it happens again, I'm that much quicker to snap into my fight or flight to make sure that this pain, this trauma doesn't happen again. Her body doesn't know that she's in this peaceful place with a bunch of sheep around and everything is okay. No, her body literally thinks that this is the same scenario as it was when she saw Joel get killed. So when someone is experiencing a PTSD flashback, it doesn't work to tell them, you're safe. Dude, it's all in your head. Their body physically feels like it's in an unsafe scenario. So you have to meet the person where they're at. This is once again another thing that makes navigating life with PTSD so painful. Here Ellie was having a wonderful time, a wonderful day, and all of a sudden, the most traumatic experience of her life gets triggered. Once again, that bleeding effect sets in. Just a quick heads up, I paused my camera and I never turned it back on for the remainder of the video, so you're just going to see my head bouncing around for when I'm talking.
Hey, stop. Hey, come on. We've got a family. She doesn't get to be more important than that. I'm not gonna do this again.
That's up to you.
This is yet another area of life for those with PTSD. Once again, like the PTSD not only changes your sense of perception of yourself, but also the world and also your behaviors. And this sudden change can come as a shock to the family members or the friends of the individual with PTSD. Our PTSD symptoms can make the life that we once knew just fall apart. Families can break apart. Situations don't feel the same anymore. I think this could be dealt with in a different way. But so many people are in her shoes where they feel like they have no other place to go. They have nowhere else to turn to.
I got you.
You know, one connection I don't really see a lot of people making is like, it's almost like Abby's adopted Lev, almost the same way that Joel has adopted Ellie.
I'm not gonna fight you. He's not a part of this.
You made him a part of this.
Okay.
Ooh. There comes that ringing in her ears, that dissociative state. Quick side note, we can consider dissociation to be like a form of a flashback. Just like how we mentioned earlier that Ellie's panic attack at the barn is a traumatic flashback. Her body gets transported back. Dissociation is also a flashback. Your body gets transported back, but it just learns that, hey, in this situation, I could just zone out.
Just take him.
What a difficult ending. Oof. Dude, that's crazy. Lost 2 fingers in that fight. So I doubt like everything within her nervous system has been resolved, but I imagine there was some sort of like resolution in letting go of this revenge quest and allowing Abby to go. Since this is a fictional character, it's hard for me to obviously say whether or not, oh, she's healed of her trauma. I highly doubt it. But I imagine there has been some sense of peace might have returned to her to allow her to go back home. And painfully, we see here that Dina and their baby, they left. A really powerful depiction of what can happen when PTSD goes untreated and unprocessed for so long. Just like how traumatic experiences kind of bleed into your memories, our traumatic symptoms can bleed into our current life. She's reaching for one more opportunity to resource, to allow for resourcing to take place and bring some calmness to her nervous system. Obviously, she looks physically pretty calm, but I imagine there's some sort of emotional turmoil and coming to see what her actions have brought about regarding her current circumstances. Like, everyone's gone. Her inability to now use the guitar and resource through that particular chord progression and bring herself back to a calming and blissful memory has kind of been tarnished. Her one grounding and resourcing technique is no longer working here.
I had Seth under control.
But I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
I'll see you around.
Yep.
Wow. I'm so glad that they ended the game this way with this one last memory, this one last flashback. I mean, I think this is what healthy communication looks like. It's absolutely impossible to go through life without conflict. The way we enhance our sense of resiliency is to engage in conflict resolution. We can't grow from difficult experiences if we aren't able to kind of look at what happened, accept what happens, communicate about what happened. For them to openly discuss their grievances and, you know, and understand where each other were coming from, this by no means indicates that everything is okay. I wonder if it's showing that Ellie can at least walk away with that tiny glimmer of peace, that, hey, at least there was some sort of makeup. She can either look at this and grieve the resolution that never really got to see its fulfillment, and or also feel some sort of gratitude that she had that opportunity, that she had that last memory with him. Wow. What an incredible ending. I don't even know where to begin. I think I've said everything that needed to be said. It's really interesting to see Ellie kind of walk away at the end. Us as an audience can draw so many different interpretations and so many different meanings about where is she going? What does it mean that she's leaving that guitar behind? Is there a healthy detachment from the trauma that she's walking away from and now ready to move on in her life? Or has the trauma gotten so bad that she can no longer even keep with her memories of Joel because it is so incredibly overwhelming for her? I don't really know what the right answer is. I mean, I'd like to hope that there is, albeit not the most positive, some sort of resolution or some sort of acceptance that she's reaching that has finally allowed her to move on and move in a different direction. I think Naughty Dog has done an incredible job here at illustrating what PTSD looks like in so many different forms. PTSD comes on a spectrum, and the way that we express our symptoms also come on a spectrum. Anyways, wow, that was a long video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for making it through the very end. I'm getting very tired. It's pretty late in the night, but I really appreciate you if you made it this far into the video. Once again, major shout out to Meg's Boring Life for allowing me to use her content for my react video. Please check out her video down in the description below. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know what I got wrong. I'm sure there's a lot of moments that I've missed that I couldn't squeeze into this video, and I would love to hear y'all's perspective on what you interpreted differently. Comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what else I should maybe react to, and yeah, I look forward to seeing y'all in the next video. This has been Traumadelic Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.
I think I'm just too afraid to get started. I try to do it, but I know this time I got this. I really hope I'm not late to the party. I try to fit in every time I get exhausted. I trim my beard, slick my hair, now I'm running late.